In this journey called life, we are faced with so many choices and decisions that has its very own unpredictable outcomes and consequences. As we navigate through it, though, we must remain true to ourselves, our values, and our purpose. In this episode, we will explore a glimpse of life through the experiences of our guests. I'm Janiella, and this is My Life, My Journey, Jamaica and Beyond. Okay, so let's kind of transition into that period of when you were basically finishing the teacher's exam and trying to find work and having that adversity of being too young at the time.
Okay, so I passed the final teacher's exam at age 15 plus, and I taught for about 6 months as in the elementary school, as what they call a pupil teacher. But the salary was very small. In those days, it was like 5 shillings, which I don't know. I can't tell its equivalency now.
Okay, so that was like very little.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Very, very low income.
Okay.
So I decided that I would apply to the bauxite companies because their bauxite industry was just starting out there in Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
I used to hear the older guys talk about being a millwright. I didn't know what a millwright was, but I submitted my application as a millwright.
Which is what?
Eventually, I came to understand that a millwright is somebody who put mechanical systems together.
Okay.
For whatever purpose that you will be doing the welding and the machinery and all of that. So that's what I applied for. Then they did call me. They never took into consideration my age. They called me and I had to sit this exam. This exam was a lot of maths, a lot of drawings and that sort of thing. So I would think about 200 people were there, including my cousin who I grew up with almost, my cousin Barris, almost my brother. He came too. We sat the exam for about maybe an hour and a half. After that, after you turn in your papers, I saw a lot of people being sent home. So it came down to maybe about 3 of us, including my cousin Barris. He had to go too. They sent him home. I was wondering, what went wrong. So the HR personnel manager, I remember his name to this day, Mr. Frank Kirby. He called me in the office. He says, "Is there any way that you can find a scholarship to go to college?" Well, I've taken a lot of exams right there in Kingston. All they were giving was half a scholarship. You couldn't get a full scholarship. So I got half a scholarship to one of the technical schools. I guess all of the technical schools in Kingston, I was awarded a half a scholarship. Of course, I couldn't go back to live in Kingston, so I winded up looking the job at the bauxite company. So this day in question, he says, "Well, I'm going to send you down to the factory to see if the factory manager can use you." As soon as I got down, he sent somebody with me. As soon as I got to the door, the factory manager came out. He said, "You're not supposed to be on these premises. You're not 18. So you got to leave the premises right away." So you can imagine how disappointed I was, because these guys were paying good money,
Aside from the teaching job that you had.
Yeah, compared to the teaching job. That was, anyhow. My friend and my very close friend who we studied together, his father worked on the railway, but the railway line. So he knew about the railway. So he encouraged me to go put in an application at the railway. And the railway looked so much, so kind of technical, you know.
Right,
so,
exactly.
But within this office itself, you had a lot of bookkeeping and accounting, more or less, mostly bookkeeping to do. And you had to learn Morse, which Morse is something that not most people can learn. You have to have the capacity to learn
Or like
Morse.
being analytical
Yes.
as well. Yeah.
So one of the things I liked about when I eventually learned is that all three of us can be here and they're talking to me on the telegraph. If you can't read it or you haven't learned, you don't know what he's saying.
Right.
All right. An example would be like once you're trained and you can read at a certain speed, as any sound you hear, you can turn it into a word. Any sound. People can knock. That's a T. You know, so that's the thing you have to go through to know, you know, to make that distinction when somebody is actually talking to you. So the railway is specific for that because that's what they use to do
their communication.
Okay. And you have to be very qualified to be sitting there and taking messages with entails the safety. Because if you miss a line clearing there, people will be dead.
Right.
So that's why we had to get a special certification from the governor himself in Jamaica in order to operate the Morse communication. So that part I love, and I love being in the office, but you know, and that has been a tremendous contribution to my life because I learned how to manage people. I learned how to discipline myself because you couldn't read Morse unless you're a disciplined person. If you drink, forget it.
Right.
Even if you know it, you're likely to make mistake.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, my first promotion is I took over from one of two gentlemen who gave the wrong line clear and two trains collided. So he lost his job right away. Government shut him down, and they were fortunate not to go to jail. That's how dangerous that was.
Right. Yeah.
So so I went and to Kingston first time going back after leaving there. Maybe 15 years. I went back. I took the exam, the clerical exam, which included maths and English and that sort of thing. But also, they had to test your capacity to understand Morse. So we had to, initially, they did some kind of signaling, you know, physical signaling. And if you could remember, for instance, if you put that up, you know, something is coming, you put a red up, you might put green, 2 green, or 3 green. So that were physical signals that your mind is open to communication.
To be able to recall the information after.
So, and I did get my, complete my qualified exam when I was 18. And in order for me to actually begin to give those line clear, I had to get, again, a special certification from the governor to be able to operate. So it was and I learned so much. And really, there were a lot of older men, station master, who, you know, although some of them drank a lot, but the basic principle was what I would, and someone who didn't have a father. That was very, very encouraging to me when I had to work with a matured station master. As a matter of fact, the both of them, the one at Porus and I eventually went to meet, and those two guys, they were all born in July, and I think so. We got along very well.
Okay, and you were also born in July.
Yeah,
which is why. Okay.
Cancerians. Yeah. Okay. So eventually, I went up the ranks in the railway, and I was the youngest person ever to be appointed as station master Kingston. Everybody else was in their 50s. I know. So that was another.
So how did you navigate that? Of course, a lot of people talk about, the conflict between like the older people and the younger people, and, especially entering the workforce with something that took other people so many years to accomplish, and then it just seemed like you walked right in and
yeah, at the time when men were retiring,
right,
and they needed a new group. But you had a lot of young guys who they were after the money, and so every evening we had to balance up our cash, make sure that you had sales and you had telegraph. This is what you had to be doing: sales, selling tickets,
right,
doing telegraph, booking freight. You had to be doing booking, invoicing, and all that. So that kind of what you would call multitasking, and you have to do it in a moment because the train only stops for maybe like a major station like Porus, it will be there for 5 or 10 minutes. The smaller station is only there for 2 minutes and it's gone. So you have to have everything ready, and all that accounting, the conductor would pick that up and put it in the safekeeping, take it to Kingston where they would do the audit, a daily audit, send it back. So we learned a lot of business, accounting, and that sort of thing. Okay. But so these guys they retired very quickly, and they started to train a whole new group of guys. But among them, I think I was a good reader of the telegraph. So they would send me to Montego Bay, which is one end of the country, Port Antonio, which was the other end of the country. The further away you are from Kingston, which is the central point, is the more more you're required to be able to read the Morse.
Okay, right.
So that's what put me. First opportunity was I became station master Troja, and then a promotion to an Otterby where I was considered a first class station master. And also in an Otterby, we'll come to talk about my church life. That's where it mostly began. And I was just about 26.
So from basically starting out, was that like 16?
Yeah, 16.
And then being able to get your opportunities in that, get certified, move up the ranks very quickly, and having that responsibility at that young of an age. And you were still doing the teaching alongside that as well, right?
No, when I stopped, no, I couldn't.
Oh, okay.
I was no full time. I was civil servant. I was a civil servant employee.
So being able to do that, and also having a personal life, being young and, having your own life and other responsibilities, to be able to manage that and to be over such an important, task, and like having other people's lives basically in your hands and being involved. So I think that's very interesting, actually. So basically transitioning from being in the railway, and so you were in there for around, you're working for the railway around
22 years.
20 years. 22?
22 years.
After that, you ended up moving to Venezuela.
Right.
So let's talk about how you transitioned from that.
Well, Kingston had become, well, let me not blame Kingston. I thought that at age 38, I needed a different sort of life. I don't know what. I knew I had to improve my education. That's one thing. So in preparing to advance for that new, whatever it was that I was thinking that was new that I wanted, I approached the general manager of the railway, and they sent me to school to further my education. I went to CAST. That was in those days College of Arts, Science and Technology, which is now University of Technology. I completed 2 years there in business administration. And then at the completion of the training at CAS, we had to take overseas exam. So I sat the overseas exam, and that exam was the Royal Certificate of Accounting, Business and Administration in London. So I completed that for CAS. And then after completing that at CAS, there was a special course designed to start at the University of the West Indies. It was for those people who had spent more than 10 years as a civil servant. And they classified us as senior civil servants. And so we would be considered, we'd be given a graduate degree, and that graduate degree would be equivalent to a PhD.
Wow.
Because the exam was administered abroad, the powers that be in London said, well, we couldn't just become PhD because of service.
Okay.
So we'd have to qualify based on more broader education. So they gave us a graduate degree in business, graduate degree in public administration. So once I was ready, then I knew I had the opportunity for me to go to Venezuela because of my first wife being Venezuelan. So I thought about that, and so I entered the Simon Bolivar educational, Spanish education. I did 2 years there while I was working at the railway. So I knew grammatical Spanish, and I could write Spanish fluently. Yeah. So, but I couldn't speak as well. But once the things were changing, the economic situation changed, and I could foresee that the railway would not be existing maybe for the next 5 years.
Right.
So I took the early out and went to Venezuela. Some miraculous things happened on the way. I recall after leaving, getting on the plane in Kingston, Palisades Airport, when we were landing in Curacao, that's the first stop in order to transit over to Caracas. The plane went down, a Dutch airline went down, and I could hear almost like it hit the water.
Yeah.
So like he either underestimated the runway, but the plane went right back up. So that was, I would say, our life was spared at that moment.
Right, definitely. Yeah.
When we actually landed again, I heard over the public address system, they called him for Lloyd Dawkins, Senior Dawkins, or Passport Key, something like that. So I'm saying, you know, what's going on? What if they want to take me back to Jamaica? So
Right.
anyhow, I went to the Passport Oficina. I went to the office. And they said that there was a Viasa airline plane coming back from New York after service. It was an empty plane. By then, I could only take $50 from Jamaica. So because it was 6 of us, we got $300. In order to stay in Curacao, that would be the exact amount of money for the hotel in Curacao. So
For you to do a layover, basically.
right, and so I would be leaving Curacao with no money going
Right,
into
exactly.
Caracas. So I agree. Take the plane. Although it was coming back from repairs, you know, all fears were gone.
Right.
You know, that I had to make that choice. So when the plane did land, it was empty, and all 6 of us, we were the only 6 people in that big what is it, Avianca plane going in. So we landed in Caracas. My $300 was saved.
Right.
And we got a free ride. Almost didn't have to go through any customs, so to speak. So that was the first miracle. The next 6 months was very difficult. I had to stretch that $300.
My goodness.
And sharing, of course, with this my wife's family.
And your own children and
yes,
everybody.
Yeah. But so I applied for a job at the telephone company. They call it Cantive for the name, yeah. And I had to again to take exam in maths, English, and Spanish.
So the same exam, so the same things you were preparing for
right.
in Jamaica, you ended up having to do the same thing there.
And it happened that when there were many people at that exam, some of them who were native born, and they failed Spanish.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's my first big challenge. And I was sort of very fearful and timid, so I was losing weight, lost a lot of weight when I couldn't get a job, you know.
Right.
I traveled all over, looking jobs, walking throughout Caracas, day after day, looking jobs. Most people, once you couldn't speak Spanish fluently, that was it, you know.
Yeah.
So I did pass the exam at Cantive, the telephone company, to be an international operator. But the day of the exam with the Spanish, I got a very low mark. I would say failed the Spanish. Not the written part, but the
verbal.
You know, the conversational part. Right. So the young lady who was doing the interview, they are taking the exam, doing the exam. She stopped me when I was leaving. She said, "Come here." And I went back. She said, "My boss said, you're from Jamaica?" I said, "Yes." My boss just came back from Jamaica, and he really loved the country, and he said the people helped him a lot with his English. So I think you should speak with him. So they arranged for me to meet him, and I went in, and he was, although his English wasn't great, but we could communicate in English. And he said the Jamaicans did a lot for him. Right after he came back from Jamaica, he got this promotion. So he recommended that I should go into what they call the sala, meaning it's a big office. And you had like about 100 operators. And he says there, in that crowd, I would be able to develop my conversational Spanish. which eventually became my second language. So
Right.
so from there, I worked in the company for about 2 years. Then I saw an ad in the English paper that the British Embassy was looking for an archivist really. So what the archivist does, he compiles all the basic information. In my case, it would be economic information. You have another part of the embassy that does migration. Then you have another portion that does cultural and so on. So I would be assigned to the economic area, which would basically be dealing about all the industries in Venezuela. You would have to provide information. We have commercial officers that do that. They were assigned to specific areas of commerce, like banking, oil, because the British England at that time produced oil, so we had to know competitively all the things that would go against Britain, so that we had to report to the British Board of Trade every week all the economic activities.
Right.
So I had to read at least 4 Spanish papers. Each commercial officer would do that.
Wow.
And then I would have to read their work and make sure we get it in the diplomatic bag, and the drivers or the carriers would take it to the plane. We had to make sure that the communication with the airline was adequate. So because the plane doesn't wait when the plane comes to pick up a diplomatic bag, because it was such, including top secrets. It couldn't wait in the airport for long. So once the plane came, everybody had to rush to make sure that thing goes in there.
Right.
So it was very fast work.
Which again, with your railway experience, it came into play.
Exactly, communication. And again, part of what was happening in the industrial side was the government of Venezuela was just for the first time putting in a subway railway. And they considered that my knowledge of the railway would have great assistance, because all the banking information and all the material purchasing, procurement would be done through banks in England. So Kleinworth Bank, Benson, Lloyd's of London, all those big banks. So we would be dealing in that area in the economic area. So I was having knowledge there of the railway and the funding of governmental funding for the railway. So that helped to I think advance my opportunity for the job. So yeah, so as an archivist, I had to make sure that all information, economic information, confidential, private, and confidential, was secured. The ambassador's staff would make sure that all secret and top secret information would be secured by his staff.
So it's like a different level, like 2 different levels of security.
But he himself, at my interview with him, called me by first name. He said, "Lloyd, if I am late with my correspondence, you make sure that it gets in the bag." That's what you're going to make sure. And even if I have things on my desk, I suppose because we usually get like about, if it's urgent, it would be 3 days. Not too urgent, 7 days. All of that have to get to the plane. So within certain time. So if my desk is crowded and I haven't responded to stuff, I'm authorizing you to make sure that I
My goodness.
get my correspondence up to date. So that was a very big
Yes,
encouragement,
definitely.
to hear that from him. As a matter of fact, because when I saw that this and the knowledge that I have of what was going on governmental and economic wise in Venezuela, I could see that there was going to be disruption in the economy and that the country was heading, the poor was being neglected in Venezuela. There was a country club area where everything looked nice and good housing and so on. My pay was very good. I never paid taxes. When I get my pay, just, pay.
Right.
And
Right.
so,
So basically, from that standpoint, going from Kingston and your experience in the railway and teaching, going to Venezuela, doing telecommunications and working for the embassy, it basically came full circle because you were already prepared for everything that you were going to do. You had the skill sets from you were younger, you had the skill sets from the careers that you had prior, and the people that you were able to interact with and that played a role in your advancements, especially career-wise. They were able to see those things, the value, the character, and the discipline as well.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's really
good. Yes.
So at some point, you also came to New York City from Venezuela. So let's talk about that transition period. So you're in a whole other country, speaking a whole other language most of the time, and now like having to deal with that cultural shock and cultural differences, and then basically going for your first time, living in the U.S., especially New York City. So let's talk about that.
Well, one very important point I need to make, that on making my decision to leave the embassy in Venezuela, I spoke to my aunts again. I have to bring them back into the picture. And I said, I want to come to the United States. She said, okay. And I would like to have a house when I come to the United States. I didn't want to bring the children into a situation where I'd come here before and I saw the situation my sister was in. She was living in a basement, I have to say that, which I was not very proud of, and smelly too. So I decided that one of the first things I would want to do when I get here was to have a house that the children could come to, my sister could join me, and so on. And my aunt set herself out. Although I gave her the money, but she gave me her credit to buy that house.